Hi and good evening. My name is David, and tonight we are playing our first session of this run of The Between. So The Between is a PBTA game of Victorian monster hunters in a Gothic London. It is by Jason Cordova. The game is heavily influenced by Penny Dreadful and other sort of Gothic horror type media. We will sort of go through a fuller introduction to the game itself in a moment, as this is our first session. This game has been arranged through the Gauntlet, which is an online role-playing group. You can find more information about what we do at the website gauntlet-rpg.com. I'll put a link to that down below if you want to check it out. But yeah, we arrange games like this one on an online calendar, which you can check out there. Sign up for sessions if you want. If there are free spaces available, we're always great to see new people. We also have a number of podcasts that you can check out there. We have a gaming magazine called Codex, and we also publish a few sort of standalone games as well, including this very one that we're playing tonight, The Between. So you can find information on all that stuff, as I said, at that website if you want to check it out further. So yeah, that's sort of what, in a broad sense, we're going to get up to. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through the process called CATS, which stands for Concept, Aim, Tone, and Subject Matter. And it's just basically a way of kind of introducing what the game is, what it's about, what we're all kind of looking for in the game, and so on and so forth. I'm going to kind of like rattle through a bit of a spiel here, but if anyone does have any questions or clarifications or anything they want to add in at any point while I'm speaking, do feel free to interrupt me. This isn't like just a monologue for me, as it were. Though I will, just like I said, ramble on if need be. But this is, as well, I will point out in the game text itself, Jason does actually lay out kind of an example CATS and an example sort of first session walkthrough for people to go through. I'm going to be deviating from that a little bit because I find the value in CATS is to kind of explain how I see the game and my approach to it, rather than just the that kind of pre-written side of it. So that's kind of what I'll be focusing more on in this. But like I said, if at any point anyone does have any questions or anything else, do feel free to jump in. So yeah, as I said, we'll start with the concept of this game. So as I said, it's a PBTA game, so it's based on the Apocalypse World system, the Apocalypse World game, I suppose I should say. But yeah, it's and in many ways it's a fairly typical PBTA game in the sense it has playbooks, it has a 2d6 looking at 6 minus, 7 to 9, 10 plus as bands for success in it, all of those sort of classic things. It is about monster hunts in Victorian London. It's set in about the year 1870, though it's not like rigidly bound to a specific time. We won't get too het up on historical accuracy. We'll have a little bit of a chat about that slightly later on, but it's not solely focused in that. And it basically will involve all of your characters, the hunters as they're referred, dealing with a succession of monstrous threats. They're not necessarily supernatural, though many of them will be. And basically you'll be kind of looking at those threats and dealing with them. As I said, it takes a lot of inspiration from the TV series Penny Dreadful in specific, but kind of the Gothic horror genre more broadly as well. I know that most of the, because we've had a little chat about this already, I know most of my players this evening have either played The Between or Brindlewood Bay before, or possibly both. And if you are familiar with Brindlewood Bay, this uses the same core mechanic, the same core investigative mechanic as Brindlewood Bay. So you kind of have you'll be gathering clues, coming up with a theory of your own as to what is going on based on those clues, and then resolving the threat based on what you find out. The difference between this and Brindlewood Bay is that in the between, you're not necessarily dealing in sort of Brindle Bay, you're basically always dealing with a murder mystery. In the between, the threats you're dealing with are going to be a bit more varied. And there's a sort of a questions mechanic where you will have to answer certain questions, and those questions will give you certain options, and those options will determine sort of how you resolve that particular threat. This will all kind of come out more as we get further into the play. As I say, it's a sort of an emergent mystery mechanic. So that is to say, there isn't a canon answer to any of the questions that you'll be trying to solve in this game. It will always be up to you as players to come up with an answer. And when you come up with an answer and take the necessary mechanical steps to make that come into force, that answer will be correct. That there is, it's not possible to get it wrong, though the mechanics may sometimes complicate your answer to it. Last, I think the last couple of sort of things to bear in mind with the game itself as to how it plays out is that this is very much a game where the protagonists, the hunters that you'll play, are not necessarily pure heroes. They are very much flawed human beings whose actions may not always be with the noblest of intents. It's also a game where you are kind of, by the structure of the game itself, you're sort of bound up into, broadly speaking, upholding the status quo and in service to the British Empire and so on and so forth. That can be a kind of a complicated relationship depending on the particular characters you're playing, but it's always kind of there in the background. It's not really a game about rebelling against that power structure, though you may choose to make your own little rebellious actions as you see fit, but that's kind of not the core loop of the game, as it were. Aim-wise, so the aim of this game, the aim of the characters themselves is, as I mentioned, is to investigate threats that face London and take action to sort of render those threats inactive to make the city a safer place. As players, our role here is to kind of to look, as well as obviously the actions of the hunters in resolving these threats, is to also explore the histories of the hunters and to learn a little bit more about them through play, about the relationships they have with one another, with London, with the world around them in general. There are a couple of like mechanical things to be particularly aware of when it comes to this, which is that in general, you should be vague about the backstory and the history of your hunters. There are some specific mechanics that will push more into exploring that backstory, which we'll touch on more as we get into the game proper. But in general, you should be a little bit reticent about describing your character's backstory until you kind of hit those moments that bring it in. Think of this a bit like in a TV series where in most well-written TV series, you don't just have a kind of moment of characters doing long exposition to camera and nothing else. We learn more about them as sort of play carries on.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, go for it.
David?
Go for it.
So when you say that about the norm of keeping our backstories hidden until they're revealed, that's not just between the characters; it's also between one another as players.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, like some level of like out of character discussion between players is always cool in general, but yeah, specifically when it comes to the backstories of the characters should be a little bit elusive. I mean, obviously, if you want to check in like for safety reasons or whatever else,
right.
if you're introducing a kind of a plot element you think might be a bit sensitive or whatever, then obviously, as ever, like player comfort trumps mechanical rules kind of thing. But yeah, that's right. Okay. There, like I said, there's specific things that are especially important to kind of shy away from. For each of the characters, you'll have a number of masks of the past that give specific like plot points in your backstory that you'll be discussing, and it's particularly important that you don't reveal any of those until you have marked that particular mask of the past off. Jose, because you're playing the explorer, your mask of the past is a little bit different, so you actually have a bit more free reign in in what your backstory you can discuss, because your Mask of the Past is slightly different to the other characters.
Very intimidated by my Mask of the Past. It's the most scary part of my character right now.
Yeah.
So it's edgy for me. So
yeah. So yeah, that's that. So in terms of tone, the T of our cats, the tone of the Between, as I said, it's obviously inspired by the source material, so it's gothic and dark, but also kind of indulgent and sensuous. We might kind of veer into some moments of dark humor or melodrama or other things, which is cool. That's also very much a part of the game. There's definitely a camp sort of element to the game as well. However, we do want to try and keep things fairly on that, coming back to that sort of tense and dangerous sort of tone. So we want to, well, we may occasionally, like I said, branch out into something that's a bit funny, a bit campy. We do want to be able to kind of bring ourselves back into that sort of more serious, darker tone at times as well. There are also some kind of natural tone shifts built into the game itself. This game uses a kind of day and night cycle. In general, the day is a lot freer for the hunters, a lot more in your own control, and that will be kind of the space for you to have longer, more kind of luxuriant scenes, to have safer scenes, and very much for you to kind of dictate the pace of the game at that stage. When we switch into the night phase, things will get a bit more intense, a bit darker, a bit more frantic, and I will take more control over like what is happening in any given scene, and yeah, try and keep things a bit more dangerous, a bit darker. So one of the things I do want to discuss is that this is a historical game set in a real sort of time and place, and as I've already said, we're not going to be concern ourselves too much with historical accuracy, but do want to keep a kind of sense of verisimilitude and keeping on tone for that sort of historical setting. If at any point you do have any questions about geography or history or whatever else, feel free to ask. I will always be happy to give feedback. I will not always be right. I do not have an extensive historical knowledge of the period necessarily, but I will always be, feel free to I will always be happy to answer any questions people have, but at the same time, don't feel that like you have to ask and get absolute clarity on historical things before you say stuff. It's also fine to just say, I'll assume it's kind of like this and go with it. That's not a problem. It's only if we get into real kind of historical stuff, like people turning up in cars or whatever, that I might say maybe not, but anything short of that, we should be cool. One of the things as well that I do want to specifically point out, so in the game is written, Jason makes a specific point of sort of saying that it's to be played kind of with a what's the word I'm looking for? A kind of neutral eye towards kind of issues of gender, race, sexuality, etc., etc. Personally, I prefer running with a slightly more of a historical lens on things. My reason for doing so is I'm not interested in this playing out historical bigotry in a visceral or raw sense, or having attacks against people based on race and class or sexuality or gender or anything like that. But I am very cognizant that there is kind of a certainly, for those of you who have not guessed it from accent, I live in the UK. I'm a resident of England, and there is very much a tendency towards trying to what's what I'm looking for, to kind of whitewash the Victorian period in a lot of ways, and that's something I'm uncomfortable with. The fact is that there is discrimination played a very big part of what we think of as being Victorian values, and I'm not 100% comfortable with just kind of sweeping it under the rug entirely. I want it to be something that is addressed, as it were. That doesn't mean I want to subject people to uncomfortable experiences in the game itself. It absolutely doesn't limit what characters people can play, because one of the things that anyone with any kind of eye towards history is that there are always exceptional people of all genders and sexes and ages and so on and so forth that do exceptional things throughout history. And those are essentially the characters that you are playing. So it's not in any way intended to limit your character agency or anything like that. It's just though I want to keep those kind of institutional that institutional discrimination kind of in the back of my mind, if no one else's. We'll still have a discussion on lines and veils on exactly how we want to approach that and so on and so forth. But just to be aware that is something that I personally think is important to include in the game. Whether or not we do and to what extent we do, we will have a discussion amongst ourselves, but just to kind of keep that on people's minds from the outset. And so finally, we'll lead into the subject matter of this game. As mentioned, the Between is sort of based on Gothic horror ideas, on the Gothic horror genre. And as such, it can go into some challenging subject matter. Our aim kind of thing is really to look at that, what I and other people have described before as kind of the good discomfort of like a horror film or a novel. So some subject matter that might be challenging and might be, occasionally, shocking, but we don't want to go into a level where that content is uncomfortable, that in a way that leads to like everyone having a bad time or anyone having a bad time. So we will be obviously doing a couple of things. One is obviously now having a discussion about what sort of subject matter might come up, and then we'll go into some safety tools around how we deal with that subject matter. So in terms of the subject matter that is kind of likely to come up in the game based on its mechanics, based on some of the threats and so on and so forth that are included in it. Both sex and violence are things that are quite prominent in the game, or can be quite prominent in the game depending on player interest. Though importantly, that does not include sexual violence. We won't be playing with any sexual violence in the game. It's not something that either the game itself or I am particularly interested in exploring. There are games that do that well, but it's not something I'm particularly looking at doing in this game. But yeah, going back to the whole both sex and violence. So probably in general, I would say in this game, we might get a bit more graphic in both than might be normal for some other games. So yeah, if you think something like Penny Dreadful as a good example, or Hannibal or other things like that, that sort of very almost artistic but graphic violence and displays of sexuality might come up. That might be the sort of like level of imagery that we're aiming at. Again, we will still be going into some lines and veils and stuff. So if there's any particular stuff we don't want to be exploring, we will stop that. But that is just to kind of get our initial sort of thoughts on it. One of the things as well is that this game, like Brindlewood Bay, has a tool where you can basically reverse the results of a bad dice roll to avoid the consequences of that dice roll. It's known as the Janus Mask in this game. One of the kind of effects of this is it means that I might lean a bit harder into adverse effects from rolls than again I might in another game. So that can involve a lot of descriptions of death and violence towards the hunters. But you do have that Janus Mask to use to kind of bring yourself back from those positions if you wish to do so. that doesn't obviate the kind of the existence of safety tools as well. If you're just uncomfortable with the way something is being described, you can absolutely steal safety tool. The fact that there is an in-game mechanic to kind of avoid that doesn't stop you from using kind of the out-of-game mechanics to avoid it as well. So just, be aware you have both of those options available to you, depending on whether it's something that is just an outcome you wish to avoid for your character, or something that's actively making you as a player uncomfortable. If it's the latter, go for the safety tools. That's what we have those safety tools for. Don't feel that you have to go along with it because that's what the game's about. So yeah, and in terms of sort of last big point on terms of subject matter, beyond the points of mentioning, kind of the sex and violence inherent in the game, there are some themes that either occur frequently in the game itself or are tied to specific threats and playbooks. So they are likely to come up at some point in the game. These include murder, cannibalism, body horror, dark sexual themes, erotic sensuality, threats to animals and children, foul language, blasphemy, witchcraft, defiling graves and corpses. We can still put any of those lines behind a line or veil as required, though that might have some impact on which threats or which playbooks we play with, if there's particular ones that lean into any of those themes that we're not happy with. So just be aware of that. But yeah, we'll also, like I said, be touching on things that involve classism, poverty, illness, colonialism and imperialism, economic exploitation, corruption, and yes, possibly some levels of institutional sexism, homophobia, and the Victorian treatment of mental illness are all kind of themes that are also likely to come up as during this game. Just again, to be aware of those. So as I said, we will be having a discussion in a moment. I'll stop recording for that, but we'll have a discussion on our lines and veils, so we get those nailed out. We'll also be using a couple of safety tools while we play. Primarily, these will be the script change tool. This is a tool with a number of kind of commands, a bit like a video remote control. I've put the details of this in the shared folder if you do want to check it out more fully. But broadly, I think the ones that I find most useful are pause. So at any point, if you want to stop play for a moment, you can just call out pause. That can be for any reason. It might be because you want to have a bit of a discussion about what's happening in the scene we're playing out. If you want to have some input into it in an out character sense, and just want to make that distinction between the kind of our in character play and our out of character discussion, you might want to just call that pause in there. It might be because you're in the middle of a scene and the doorbell goes and you have to go and answer it, and you just want to kind of duck out for a moment. Also absolutely fine. If you get a phone call, if you just need to go and grab a drink, or even if just a scene is getting quite intense and you just want to take a few seconds just to kind of regather yourself, kind of thing, you can use the pause for any of those reasons. That's perfectly valid for any basically reason you want to kind of call stop the game for a moment. There's also fast forward. Fast forward can be called if you want to kind of skip over something. So that might be if, say, we're discussing an autopsy going on and it's starting to get a bit more graphic than you're comfortable with. You might want to say, no, can we just fast forward over this and just get the information we find out? I don't need a full blood and guts discussion of what's going on here. And that's cool. Or it might also be if we just feel like a scene is kind of circling around a bit and just needs to kind of get to a conclusion. We might say, can we just fast forward to the point where a decision is made or an action is taken or whatever else, rather than just keep circling around. Those are the sort of things we might call a fast forward for. And then there's rewind. And rewind can basically be called when we want to make a quick change to something that's happened already. So that might be, well, actually, I've realized that the direction we're going in is leading towards an area I'm not happy with, or don't want to go in, or I'm not interested in. So can we rewind to a slightly earlier point and just go in a slightly different direction, so we're not going to end up in that territory? Or it might just be as simple as, oh, I realized the way I phrased that wasn't quite the way I meant it. I came across as a bit more aggressive than my character was intended to be. Can I'll just reword that in a different way. Anything like that is Rewind's good for that. We also have the X card in play. The X card can be invoked by either doing kind of an X with your hands, by putting an X in the chat at the side, or by just saying, I'd like to X card that. I'll give my usual disclaimer that I'm often flicking between different tabs and such like. So if you do something that's entirely visual, I might not immediately see it. So if you like, the best way of getting my attention is just to say, I'd like to X card that over chat. But if you do notice that someone else has like done a more visual X card signifier and I don't seem to have clocked it, please also feel free to shout out on their behalf and just say, hey, can we stop for a minute? If you call out the X card, we can use that basically for removing or avoiding content that someone isn't happy with. So if subject matter comes up that you're just not comfortable playing with, or even if you just feel like it's a bit off tone and is kind of detracting from the sort of the vibe of the game, anything like that, we can call an X card for that and just remove that and move on. I might ask what is being X carded if it's not immediately obvious from context, but I won't ask you to explain any more than you're comfortable to do as to why you're doing it. Just calling an X card is enough. I don't need any more information. If you want to give it, if you want to have a discussion, that's cool, but don't feel that you have to. We'll respect that either way. We'll also be playing under the open door policy. And this is just quite simply to say that if at any point you need to leave the game, whether that be, again, to take a quick break or like to leave the session entirely or to leave the campaign entirely, any of those three, you can feel free to do that at any point. If you can let me know if or when you're likely to be back, that is useful, but it's not mandatory. If you need to take a break, take a break. That's always cool. So yeah, well, as I said, in a second, I'm going to stop our recording and we'll go over our lines and veils, but just as a quick refresher on lines and veils. So these are essentially ways of indicating content that we don't want or aren't happy with in the game, or we don't want to go into too much detail of in the game. These lines are things that we don't want coming up at all, that we're just kind of outright not happy with having happen. So if something is lined, we'll avoid that entirely in the game itself, and we'll try and avoid it as much as possible in kind of out of character discussion as well. Veils are things where we are kind of technically happy with them coming up, but we don't want to go into too much detail on them, so that we'll never make them the focus necessarily of a scene. We'll not get into too much gory detail, that sort of thing. We've also got a column on there for ask first. This is for stuff where we just want to kind of check in before we introduce that subject matter to the game, that everyone is happy with where we're going with it. If it's something that people are particularly, are in theory happy with including in the game, but we just want to have that extra level of safety and checking in before we introduce it. And finally, I've put a column in there for stuff that we're interested in. This is stuff that is either we're particularly interested in exploring in general, or I have marked some stuff on there that is just particularly likely to come up just based on the game itself, or in the direction I'm taking the game in. So is more likely to occur than might otherwise be the case. The last thing we have as well on that tab in our character keeper is this little indicator for your level of comfort with potential of romance for your character. So there's one column for your general level of comfort with player characters, one for non-player characters. Feel free to fill that out with your particular level of comfort, and but just to bear in mind as well that this is a kind of a general player level comfort thing. So if someone does indicate that they're not interested in general in romances, please also avoid kind of making them the subject of, like, you know, unrequited romance and the like as well, because this is something that's like a player level comfort thing. Obviously, when it comes to the character level, the player may be in general happy with exploring things of romance, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the character will be up for any romance that's put their way. But just, this is more kind of a character level thing, just for a moment. So yeah, I think that is all the discussion I wanted to have on that. So I'm going to pause recording for a minute and just give everyone a moment to look over those lines and veils. Also, obviously, if there is anything that isn't currently listed on that list, and you want to put in as a line of veil or anything else, feel free to write it in at the bottom, and we'll take that into account as well. This is also a living document, so if at any point you want to amend to put something as a line that isn't currently a line, or to add something to the list, feel free to do so. But yeah, as I said, I will stop our recording briefly so we can just go over those. Awesome. So yeah, we've gone over our lines and veils. We have those recorded. As I said, as ever, that it is a living document. So if you do ever want to add to that, do feel free to do so. If you can just give me a quick message, just so that I know to check in and communicate that to everyone else, because again, I might not be looking at it constantly, but otherwise that's cool. And so yeah, everyone has already selected their playbooks and filled out most of the details that we have at this stage on them. So in a second, I will ask everyone to introduce their characters, and then we'll go around and do sort of the first stage of play, which is to introduce, well, after we've introduced characters, to populate out their personal quarters, so that we can get an idea of what a little bit more about their character and what stuff they have available to them. So yeah, I'm going to start off, and I'll ask you to both introduce yourself and the character that you are going to be playing this evening. And obviously, again, at this stage, kind of the backstory that you give your character, as sort of already discussed, should be fairly kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Fairly sparse. We're not looking for huge amounts of detail, just a vague, a kind of a vague indication of what your character is like. And then I'll ask everyone to kind of introduce their the little descriptive text about their playbook as well, once we've gone around once, and then we'll do personal quarters items. So I'm going to go in character keeper order. So I will start with yourself, please. Jose, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us about who you'll be playing this evening.
So hi everybody again, my name's Jose and I use he, him pronouns, and I am going to be playing Lady Camila Betancourt-Davies. It is the Explorer playbook. And so Lady Camila is from fantastic wealth and privilege, born into it. She's the widow of a lord that she explored with the colonies and potential colonies on various expeditions, and then she continued those explorations on her own after the passing of her husband. Yeah, I think I will leave it at that. Oh, her look, I can talk about her look.
Yeah,
she has
absolutely. Yeah,
a well-lined face, steely eyes, and salt and pepper hair. She's a woman probably in her late 50s or early 60s, and quite striking and tall.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, and if you'd like to introduce your vice as well.
Sure. Lady Camila's vice is domination.
Excellent, excellent.
Which I will leave vague for the moment.
Yep. A little bit of leeway is always good with the vices, so that's not a problem. Brilliant, thank you very much. And yeah, next, Elle, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little about who you'll be playing this evening.
Sure. Hi, I'm Elle. I use she, her pronouns, and I'll be playing Fujisawa, the factotum. No first name, as the playbook demands. And I'll give even less detail than Jose did, because I don't know anything about her yet, except that her look is a brass hair clip in the shape of a swallow, a hip flask with a Rear Admiral Boots cat decoration, and a sky blue kimono. And her vice is betting shops.
Awesome. And one of the things actually we will have to do briefly, but I think we'll probably do kind of the we'll introduce all the characters first, but we will also have to decide who Fujisawa is going to be the factotum of, as there's a kind of an inherent link between you and one of the other characters. But yeah, we can get into that in a moment. And brilliant. No, thank you very much, Elle. That's great. And Daryl, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us about who you'll be playing.
Hello, so I am Daryl. I use they, them pronouns, and I am playing the Vessel, who goes by the name of Priyanka Bellacqua, who also uses they, them pronouns. They have a very feminine appearance, so they will sometimes be referred to with she, her pronouns, which is acceptable, but Priyanka personally identifies without gender. So Priyanka is a daughter of the British Raj, has been in London for only a couple of years, and rumors swirl around about them. And their look is often seen with usually in white colored clothing, raven feathered cuffs, tall heeled boots with dark laces, and a jeweled eye patch. Generally, I'm reading it more like a blindfold here. Some oftentimes seen wearing a blindfold, and their vice is Sunday morning mass. You're on mute, David.
You're muted, David.
Thank you. So I am. Yeah, so brilliant. Thanks for that, everyone. So yeah, what we'll do now is we'll just go back around the same order again. And just up towards the top of the playbook, you'll have the little introductory text that just gives us a little bit more information about the playbook itself. So I'll ask each of you to read your own one for that. And obviously not necessarily 100% of the description in that will be pertinent to your particular character, but it will give us a kind of flavor of what each of these playbooks is about. So Lady Camila, we'll start with you if you'd like to read your introductory text.
Sure. Am I on? Yeah, I'm on. You were born into a world of fantastic wealth and privilege. You could have spent your days cosseted by luxury, with nothing more pressing than deciding what to wear to that evening's dinner party. But you chose a different life. You chose to serve your queen. You leveraged your wealth and connections to explore the world, to chart unknown territory, and now you have a mountain range named after you. A fitting honor, considering you tower over other Britons. Your strength, your intellect, your cunning, none can match it none except the mastermind. The mastermind who plots ceaselessly against her majesty and whose mind and resources dwarf your own. You have conquered every trial the gods have placed before you, but the mastermind is something altogether different. And your work with, oops, gosh, it's hard to manage this. Character keeper. Let me do it this way. There, that works. Your new work with Hargrave House is connected to them in some way. You spend your days and nights exploring the true heart of darkness, the monsters that stalk the streets of London, but none are so monstrous as your opponent, the one who sits on the other side of the chessboard. will Great Britain still be standing when the grand game is over?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And yeah, Fujisawa, if you would like to read out your playbook introduction.
Sure. You had a life before you entered the service of your employer, but the details of that life are unimportant. All that matters now is the person you serve and Hargrave House, where you will grow ancient and die, if you're lucky. More likely, your employer's colleagues, these hunters, will be the end of you, overturning things that should remain hidden and goading on terrors that dwell in dark places. You'll do your best to help them, of course, to keep them alive, because without them, what are you, really?
Lovely, thank you. And Priyanka.
For as long as you can remember, dark entities have been near. They lurk just inside your peripheral vision, just at the mirror's edge. When you close your eyes, you can actually feel them, their cold breath, their oily touch, an occasional feverish embrace. They want to be inside you. They want to rub against your guts and deposit their power. Others are drawn to you as well, those who would use you to study these dark things in order to serve their own agenda. Some of these interlopers, these usurpers, can be of use, such as the hunters with whom you share a home. Others, like the coven, are best avoided. In either case, you are no one's object, tool, or weapon. You are no mere bystander. Your fate is yours to shape.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So what we'll do now is we'll go through, actually, no, the first thing, sorry, I will do is I will ask Fujisawa, who are you interested in being your employer? And then, you know, just to confirm from them that they're cool with you being kind of linked to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I am interested in being employed by the Vessel, if you're okay with that, Joe.
Yeah, that'll work for me.
Awesome. No, that's cool. So yeah, we will learn more about that link between you in time, of course. But for now, just the fact that it exists is of interest to us. Awesome. So what we'll do next, we'll go through, and you'll see down towards the bottom of the character keeper, you'll each have a section called personal quarters, which just has a number of lines with checkboxes next to them. The next step for us is to populate this, our personal quarters, with some items. We'll do this by basically going around and asking all of the players, including myself, to detail an item that we find in your personal quarters. The mechanical effect of these is that they can be marked off during play to give a roll advantage, where they could be brought into use. Usually, that basically means that you'll be rolling with 3 dice and taking the 2 highest dice. So we'll touch on it properly once it actually comes up in play. But just be aware that's always something you have available to you. And in general, you can access your kind of personal quarters items without having to do a lot of explanation as to why you have it. Just, you know, the fact that it's something in your personal quarters that you can call and is enough. You can always say, oh, I happen to have it with me. If you have a particularly large or bulky item you wish to be taking out on a mission with you or whatever, you may want to kind of mention it in, you know, in your descriptions. But it's in general, it's not a big issue that you should always have access to those items. Sometimes there'll be things that are a bit more ephemeral as well, but we'll touch on those when we come to them. The other side of them, obviously, aside from that mechanical factor, is it's just a way of getting an idea for the vibes of the characters from how others see them and what items they choose to grant to them. So we'll start off back again. I'll just keep going around in the same order. So we'll start off with Lady Camila's personal quarters. So what is one item that we find in Lady Camilla's quarters? And either feel free to jump in whenever you have a thought, Fujisawa and Priyanka, and I will throw something in as well.
I think one thing that we see is an ivory horn, like the kind that you would use to sound, like blow sound through, with gold accents and a leather strap. So it's probably hanging up in a corner or something like that.
Awesome, awesome. Also, I should point out at this stage, Lady Camila and everyone else when we get around to you, if you want to veto something or modify something so it fits in better with your kind of self-perception, that's also cool. You know, don't feel you just have to take what's given to you, sort of thing. But it is intended as a dialogue. But yeah, if you're happy with the item, then feel free to note it down.
I'm doing my best to paraphrase what everyone says, but if I make any mistakes, let me know.
No worries, no worries.
I think that perhaps you have a signet ring inherited from your husband that denotes his membership in a secret society.
And I think I'm going to go for, something a bit more mundane. And I'm going to say that you have a big elephant gun hanging on your wall.
Thank you, everybody, for these
Awesome.
lovely gifts.
And next week when we get Brian here, we'll do another round of this for him to add an item to everyone's quarters and for everyone to add an item to his character's quarters. But obviously, yeah, this will be it for today. So yeah, next it will be Fujisawa's turn. So Lady Camila and Priyanka, if you have thoughts, feel free to volunteer those.
I think you have a small silver compact hand mirror, and when it opens, the glass is tarnished to the point where you can't really see yourself, but it's obviously been with you for a very long time.
I love that. Thank you.
I think you also have a small book of handwritten poetry that was given to you by a family member. I'll leave it undefined.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I think that you have a I'm going to say like a well-thumbed like A to Z guide to London, you know, sort of street maps and the like.
Perfect. Thanks.
Awesome. And yeah, Priyanka. So again, yeah, if Lady Camila and Fujisawa have thoughts as to what we might find in Priyanka's personal quarters.
I'm imagining a small but ornate and beautiful golden statue of Ganesha.
I think you have a blood-stained athame.
And I'm going to go for the super obvious one, based on your thing of the veil thing, and say that I think you have a like a hand painted, customized tarot deck.
I like all of these. I will put them all to good use.
Brilliant. So yeah, as I said, we will take we'll take a quick break now, as we have our initial character setup done. We will come back. I'll say if we come back at 10 past, then we'll start with our phases. When we get back as well, I'll explain a little bit more about the kind of the structure of the game itself. Again, I know most of you are probably at least passingly familiar with it, but I'll just go over it as a refresher. But yeah, I'll see you all back in about 10 minutes time. Awesome. So we, as I said, I'll do a very brief introduction to kind of the game itself and the core mechanic, and the structure of the game as well, because that is kind of quite important how we play this game. As those who have experience with it already will know. So the game itself, you will always have at the outset just one, but as we play further, more will be introduced. There will always be ongoing threats to the City of London that you will be dealing with. These threats will be introduced at a stage in the game that I'll explain in a moment. That will kind of introduce them, what's going on, how you know about it, what your overall objectives are. What each of these will do as well is it will present you with one or more questions. Your aim essentially is to be able to answer these questions. You will do so by collecting clues and then piecing those clues together to forge an answer to that particular question, or to one of the questions, or to multiple of the questions in some cases. As I mentioned already, there is no canonical correct answer to any of these questions, as modified by the role, which we'll get to when we get to it. But in broadly speaking, what you answer for that question is correct. That may be complicated slightly, as you will see, but in general speaking, the way you answer that question is the correct answer to it. There is no other answer to it other than the one that you give. You answer a question by, as I said, gathering clues and linking them together. Clues will be discovered as you play, mostly through the use of the information move, though there are a couple of other moves as well that can also grant you clues in certain circumstances, as we'll see. You want to be gathering, to answer any question, you need to gather a number of clues equal to at least half of the complexity of the question, which I'll mention when I introduce it. And the roll is made by rolling a 2d6 and then adding the number of clues that you are applying to that answer minus the complexity of that question. So, for example, if a question is a complexity of 6, yeah, and you put forward 8 clues, that support your answer to that question, then you would be rolling 2d6 plus 2 to see if that answer is correct or not. So broadly speaking, the more clues you can gather together to answer a particular question, the better off you'll be when you try and make that roll. But as I said, you always have to have at least half the complexity in terms of clues to make the roll. But there is nothing stopping you from making that roll at a penalty if you're happy to do so. So yeah, that is essentially what you're looking at doing is answering those questions. And so any threat that you are dealing with, it cannot be stopped. If it's if the threat is a creature, it cannot be killed, destroyed, driven off permanently, anything like that, unless you have answered a question that gives you an opportunity to resolve that particular threat. That is the only way of doing so. Once you have answered the question and now have the option to to resolve that threat, then you may need to take some additional action to do so, depending on how well your answering a question goes. If you roll particularly well, you will probably have an easier time of resolving that threat. But again, we'll get onto that as and when it becomes relevant. So yeah, that's kind of what you're looking to do. The game is structured into a number of phases based around the time of the day. So in the normal run of things, in fact, we will normally, to be honest, probably end with the dawn phase, ideally. The dawn phase is a kind of cleanup phase after the other phases have taken place. Like I said, chronologically it's first, but in practice it tends to be the last phase that we do unless we run over a session or what have you. The day phase is is one of the sort of the primary phases in terms of like role play actions. You can get things done in the day phase. You can go off, you can see people, you can investigate, you can do various other things in the day phase. The day phase as well is very specifically kind of your time to dictate the pace of what you want to do. If there are any particular scenes that you want to have happen, if there are places you want to go, if there's people you want to speak to, and particularly if you want to spend time with the other hunters and resolve the vulnerable move, which we'll touch on later, it's probably something we won't be looking at necessarily straight away because it's the primary way of removing conditions, which again we'll get to in time. So it tends not to be as valuable at the very outset of the game, but quickly becomes a lot more so. But yeah, anything like that, the day phase is probably the best time for you to get those sort of actions done. In the day phase, I'll tend to be a bit more generous with allowing you the time and the option to set those scenes as you wish. Once I think we've kind of spent enough time on a particular day phase, I'll wrap that up and we'll move on to the next one. Today, once we get into running in a moment, we will start off in the day phase. I will introduce a new threat, and then you can start taking your actions during the day as you wish. We'll probably run with a fairly truncated day phase today, just so that we can, so that I can try and fit in a full cycle of play essentially. But yeah, that's the day phase. As I said, the day phase is kind of intended to be your time to sort of set the pace of things and to do the sort of stuff you want to do. We then get to the evening phase. In the evening phase, there's a couple of again, it's more of a housekeeping phase. There's a couple of actions that we'll do around detailing a bit more about Hargrave House itself. Some playbooks will have some actions that trigger it at the evening phase. But otherwise, it's kind of our time to set out the agenda for the night phase. Night phase is another phase, a bit like the day phase, where you get to go off again, have scenes, investigate stuff, confront things. There's a couple of things specific about the night phase that are important. Firstly, you can only resolve a threat at night. You can't do that during a day phase. Generally, some particular threats may have additional rules around that, but in general and in the major part, you can only ever resolve threats at night. Yeah, as I said, you will need to do that at night phase. Also in the night phase, I will in general run things a bit shorter, a bit more focused, a bit faster and more dangerous. that might get waived sometimes, but in general, if you're looking to have long, in-depth discussions with people, the night phase is probably not the phase when that's going to happen, or it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to get away with that. It's the night phase is when a lot more action tends to happen. There's also a couple of moves, the day and night move, which are triggered in their various times, and the night move is more dangerous than the day move, essentially. So stakes will be higher, and the outcomes of things will be generally worse at night. So yeah, that's the night phase. Then, like I said, that's sort of when we wrap around into the dawn phase, where again we do a bit of cleanup. We mark XP and stuff like that. You will have on your character sheet, which we can look at now. You will have a couple of questions. These are towards the top of the character sheet, just underneath your abilities, called dawn questions. Every dawn phase, you will answer. We will answer all of these questions. For every answer that you can give, basically every answer that you can answer yes to, you get to mark a point of XP. There are 3 questions that you will always answer, which are: did the hunters answer a question? Did the hunters resolve a threat? And did you experience an echo in the night? We'll get onto echoes in the night shortly. You'll also then have an option for 2 other questions generally. Again, a couple of playbooks have slightly different rules around this, but in general, you'll have two slots essentially to put questions in. You'll have a number of questions in a drop down that you can select. And again, any of those questions that you can answer yes to, you mark a point of XP for. So you want to kind of use those questions that you choose to sort of shape the scenes that you throw yourself into and how you deal with stuff generally. Is the optimal way of using them, essentially. And yeah, those will be answered, and you can re-choose your optional questions every dawn phase. But obviously, as we will be starting off with day phase, but you can make those initial choices as you see fit. And that is basically it. It is my intention to try and get a complete day to night cycle in every session we play. Probably won't always happen because I'm not always the most concise of GMs, as it were. But it will be kind of I will be aiming for us to kind of hit that sort of pace, and we'll kind of get there eventually together as we all get used to the game and used to playing with each other, I think. But just to be aware that will be my kind of my intended pace as we sort of get into things properly. In particular, in the night phase, I will be kind of cutting between scenes quite aggressively at that point to try and keep us on target. But that is part of the experience of the game, I think. But just so you're all aware of that, so it doesn't seem like I'm coming off as overly harsh if I sort of start getting a bit more. Yeah, exactly.
David,
Awesome.
Is there any way we could hide some of the columns in the keeper? I'm having trouble kind of navigating on my laptop for some reason.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I will hide the playbooks that we are not using, and I'll unhide them when Brian comes to make his selection next time.
Thanks.
Awesome. So yeah, with that, I will start off by introducing our first threat. So our first threat is going to be the Limehouse Lurker. I have filled in some of the initial details for this on the threats tab in the character keeper if you do want to check that out, but you don't need to for the time being. So the Limehouse Lurker. Jenny Johnston, the proprietor of an opium den in Limehouse, tells you a story that has not yet reached Scotland Yard or the papers. 3 people have been found dead in recent days, the bodies completely exsanguinated. The first was a sex worker called Soft Jimmy, found in a dark corner of the opium den. The second was a young mother, Charla Bell, found in an alleyway behind the Limehouse School. And the third was a Chinese sailor, Zhao Donghai, found outside a pub near the Regent's Canal dock, the Dog and Whistle. Jenny, an informal community leader in Limehouse, has been keeping the bodies in her basement. She's hesitant to go to the authorities because she fears it will cause trouble for the small but thriving Chinese immigrant community in the district. She heard that Hargrave House has experience with matters such as this and has asked for your help. So, I just have to do a bit of checking. Okay, so you all have the same. So I think I'm going to ask Priyanka. Hargrave House knows about creatures that drink the blood of their victims. They're called vampires. A detail in Jenny's story convinces you that this particular vampire has the body of a small child. What is it?
The thing that Jenny described specifically was a pair of puncture wounds. It was found on each of the victims in a different place on each body, but the puncture wounds were too far apart to be standard vermin, but not large enough to have been a large animal. And so that combined with the exsanguination leads us to believe that it is a small vampire.
Brilliant, thank you. So the vampire is physically a child, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is young in the sense of being a vampire. Vampires never physically age beyond how old they were when they were turned, and an old vampire has to be handled in a very different way from a young one. Their abilities are very different. So for this particular threat, the first question, which has to be answered before you can answer either of the other two, is the vampire young or old? And this has a complexity of 4. So you're looking for at least 2 clues, more than 4 clues to roll with a positive number. And whether you answer if the vampire is young or old, it will unlock the next appropriate question, which is basically the next questions are about how you resolve the threat. So if it is young, what was the child's home life like before they were turned? This is a complexity 4 as well. And that will allow you to resolve the threat by luring the vampire into a scene reminiscent of its home life, and then either destroying it or making arrangements for it to safely feed on a regular basis. On the other hand, if the vampire is old, you have to learn where the vampire's nest is. This is, again, complexity 4. And that answering that question will allow you to resolve the threat by infiltrating its nest and either destroying it or convincing it to leave London through some other means. The other thing to be aware of is that whilst you are acting towards resolving this threat, you will have access to the Mask of the Sun. So when you would mark a mask by using the Janus mask move, which again we'll get into as we start playing properly, instead of marking one of your masks of the past or the future, one hunter can instead choose to mark the Mask of the Sun, which will have its own particular effect. But yeah, that is the information you currently have. There have been these 3 reported killings in Limehouse. The bodies are all being held in Jenny Johnston's opium den. Said the first body was found in the opium den itself. The second was found by the Limehouse School, which is a workhouse, essentially, in Limehouse. And the third was found by a pub called the Dog and Whistle. These have all been killed fairly recently, and the bodies, as I said, are still in storage. And so, with all that information presented to you, we will start off our day phase. And we'll start this off basically, I will just go around and ask you any particular things you want to do in your day phase, whether that be investigating a threat or something else. Where you might want to go to investigate, who you might want to see, who you want to talk to, if you want to have any scenes between each other, anything like that. But yeah, as we start off with the day phase, I'll start with yourself. So Lady Camila, what would you like to get up to today during this day phase?
Makes sense to investigate one of the crime scenes. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. How about the pub? To travel to the pub, and is that where the Chinese sailor was
It is,
found?
yeah. He was found outside outside the pub. Yeah, that's correct.
Outside of the pub. So yeah, to go to during the day to speak to the pub owner or to some patrons of the pub and see what kind of information she can drum up about the circumstances of the killing.
Awesome, thank you very much. And Fujisawa, how about yourself? Is there anything that you would like to investigate or get up to today?
Yeah, I think it might be interesting to have a scene with Priyanka, just getting to see our kind of daily routine together. And then maybe I'll go to Limehouse School to investigate.
Awesome, awesome. That sounds good. And yeah, Priyanka, how about yourself? Is there any anything that you any particular things you want to try and get up to in the day phase today?
I think Priyanka would love to have that you know, like one-on-one scene with Fujisawa. And then so just to clarify, Camila's going to the pub, Fujisawa is going to go to the school. Isn't Jenny keeping the bodies in her brothel?
Opium den, but yes, that's correct.
The opium den. Yes, then Priyanka would want to go and investigate the bodies.
Sure. That sounds like a good division of labor. Perfect. So yeah, I think we'll start out by framing up that scene between Priyanka and Fujisawa. If you want to frame this up around one of your vices, we can do it as a vulnerable scene. Neither of you have conditions that you need to clear at the minute, but that doesn't stop you from having the vulnerable scene, and the person whose vice it resolves around can get some additional benefits. So we can do that if you want. But if you're more interested in just playing out an interaction between the characters, that's also cool. We don't need to make it a vulnerable scene. But if you think one of your vices might come into play, you can absolutely frame the scene around that.
So initial thoughts are either like a dressing scene, or like if we want to incorporate the vice, like I love me some heavy-handed Catholic symbolism. So it could be like in a chapel or something. So
I also love some heavy-handed Catholic symbolism. But maybe let's start with like the dressing scene. I think that would be fun.
Okay. So yeah, I guess this would be like Priyanka's personal chambers then. And so it's like, it's this interesting kind of like mishmash between like the influences of India, but like with the, like making it palatable for the English viewpoint, as it were. And I think the interesting thing about all of Priyanka's clothes is that they are always pristinely white ever since she was well, that's backstory stuff, so I won't say that part. But so yeah, probably a thing where like almost doll-like, she just sits in front of a mirror as you kind of minister to her.
Yeah, I think we see Fujisawa in her kind of iconic sky blue kimono with her own hair already done up in a very nice like chignon. And she's probably also set out like a silver tray with your favorite tea that she brings you nearly every morning, sat in front of you, in front of the mirror. And I think she is running her hands right now through Priyanka's hair as she sets it in your favorite style. And even though the actual like actions, the movements of setting your hair are very like rote at this point, like it's clearly very practiced. There's almost like a sort of loving quality to it. And I think Fujisawa is trying not to make eye contact with Priyanka, but can't help but stare at her in the mirror.
I think that as this is happening, you just kind of hear Priyanka like reciting the itinerary of the day, you know, as in like, you know, visit the house, view the evidence, tea at 2, court at 6, dinner at 7. And then you just like over and over again, almost as if practicing it. And then like also probably like there's the moment where you like, you know, tuck hair behind her ear or something like that. And you almost feel like a lean into the touch. Not enough to, you know, do anything else, but just enough to show that it is felt and appreciated.
Yeah, I think Fujisawa pauses just for a split second and she does that out of surprise and yearning. But you know, continues very businesslike, or as businesslike as she can manage. Miss Bellacqua, what do you make of this new vampire, it's called?
Many of the books here, and it's all, Priyanka closes their eyes for a moment, as if kind of like sifting through internal records, and then opens their eyes again and says, many of the records of Hargrave House indicate that such a thing is fairly common, and it should be fairly easy to exterminate one if it is young. If it is older, there shall be issues. So we must first identify the age of the monster. But I have faith that based on the evidence and based on the previous records, there should be no issue.
Well, I'm glad you think so. But what a monstrous thing, what a monstrous transformation for a child.
Truly, isn't it better that such a child might actually receive the strength one needs to survive this world?
Perhaps, but perhaps it is also a mercy that those who are too weak are released from this world swiftly.
I think it is important that even the weakest of things fight for their survival.
Well, you are usually right about these things.
And then at that point, Priyanka reaches for like the blindfold that she always wears in public and hands it to you to put on her.
Yeah, Fujisawa very gingerly places it over Priyanka's eyes.
I think that's a good scene.
Yeah, I think so too. Also, I realized I referred to Priyanka with the honorific miss, but is there something that Priyanka prefers?
That's probably what they get referred to as all the time. And like I'm still thinking about what I want Priyanka's relationship with her gender to be. So yeah, like, but in society they would be referred to as like Miss Bellacqua. So that makes sense.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's brilliant. Cheers. Lady Camila, So yeah, Limehouse is sort of a district down by the docks in the East End. It's obviously a lot of shipping goes through here, and a lot. It's a kind of big immigrant community in the area as well, particularly Chinese, but other nationalities also. The Dog and Whistle is a pub sort of along the dockside. It's a fairly generic working class pub. Has dull brass fixtures, tin mugs for people to drink out of. There is a pub sign of a dog out front, though no whistle is evident on the sign itself. In a second, we'll do a quick paint the scene question to introduce it further. But what I'm interested in first is how do you think you are arriving at the Dog and Whistle, and sort of how do you look? How are you dressed as you do so?
So I'm arriving by cab or carriage,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the scene opens with just the door of the carriage opening and just seeing Lady Camilla's boot hit the mud as she steps out of the carriage, and she's dressed simply but elegantly in black. So to look at her, you would see her social class immediately, but you would not. But she's not ostentatiously dressed in any way, as if she were going to the opera or something. She is, yeah, simply dressed. And I see her stepping out of the cab. You see her feet hit the mud, and then you pan up to her face as she looks out across the Thames, actually, because you can see the Thames from here, and her eyes narrows as she sees the sign of the dog outside the pub. And then she is taking in the area around the pub, saying if there's a back entrance, are there alleyways, she's just assessing the entire geography of the pub itself. She doesn't know exactly where the body was found, or so, and there's a stench of fish and and kind of, that stench of the waterfront of decaying fish, but also decaying plant matter and algae, and just kind of that heaviness in the air.
Yeah,
but it doesn't seem to impact her.
Yeah, and this is on the tidal end of the Thames as well. So it's probably just that very not like full on seaside smell, but that very slight like brackish salt smell in the air. It's but yeah, you will you will see, like I said, the pubs there. It's set in like a row of buildings. There is kind of like an alleyway up the side, probably leads to some sort of courtyard. But yeah, there's an obvious door at the front with kind of leaded windows around it and all that. And yeah, we'll do a quick paint the scene for the Dog and Whistle. So for those of you, if anyone isn't familiar with a paint scene, what we'll do is basically put a question to you. This is a question for everyone. And it's just to give a bit more detail about the scene that we're in and the vibe of it and stuff. The questions will be a bit different depending on which location we're at. But this one is, this pub caters to sailors and folk who work on the canal. How do you know this? What sort of signifiers are that this that's the sort of the clientele of this place? So yeah, if anyone has any thoughts, feel free to, to jump in with that.
I think So one thing that happens after Lady Camila surveys the scene outside of the pub before she walks in, she just turns to the cabbie and says, "Wait." And then she just walks straight in through the door of the pub and lets the door shut behind her. And then I think it's sparsely populated at the moment, but as she takes in, her eyes adjust and she takes in the clientele of the pub. I think she can see clearly that they're sailors from their garb, and also that they're largely Chinese or of Asian descent. But there's only one or two of them in the background, but they do look up and notice her as she enters, since she's not normal clientele for this type of establishment. And she just takes in their gaze. She's just making an entrance.
Brilliant, thank you.
So for one of the painted scenes, I think that the place is called The Dog and Whistle, and there is a dog on like the sign and everything, but the interior decor have instances is like has a large Chinese population. The wall paintings on the like around the establishment are of these kind of like Chinese scenes of sailors and boats harpooning whales and bringing in nets and things like that. Very counter to the name of the establishment itself.
Cool.
And I think that right above the bar, almost as an afterthought, as though someone pointed out there wasn't enough dog themed decor here and they really need to add some. There's a rather kind of tacky painting, I think. Almost the like Victorian equivalent of those like dogs playing poker paintings. Except it's dogs in sailors' whites, you know, flying a flag off a mast or something. I'm not a sailing person, yeah. But
no, that's cool. That's cool. I like it. Awesome. So yeah, Lady Camila, as you walk in, as you said, yeah, people look at you as it starts off with that general, like, you know, the people who aren't too in their cups or involved in their conversation will just kind of look at the sound of the door opening. But once you actually walk in, there will be that moment of, you know, there isn't a piano being played in here, but if there was, it would probably stop at this point. The barman will look up and see you. He's a fairly big man. He's got kind of balding, but with a sweaty forehead, big hairy arms, and he's wearing like a black apron on over his shirt. And as you come in, he will call out, "Good day, ma'am. Is there anything I can do for you? Are you looking for directions?" And yeah, you can definitely hear the kind of it's like confusion, as it were, in his voice.
So I think Lady Camila, I see her just turning to look at him with a dead stare and narrowing her eyes a bit, and then quickly closing the distance between them as she approaches them without responding to his query. And when she reaches the bar, she says, "Are you the proprietor of this establishment?"
Yes, ma'am. Franklin Horsford, ma'am, at your service. I run this place.
How do you do? I have questions that I hope you can give me some answers to, sir. And she drops a coin onto the bar.
At that, any objections he may have had seem to dry up, and he will just sort of nod.
It's my understanding that there was an incident here in recent nights where an unfortunate sailor was found dead on your premises. Is that correct?
Awesome. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you to make the information move.
Oh, okay.
And we'll see, and basically based on that, we'll see how this thing plays out.
Is there a dice roller?
Oh, I haven't linked one yet. I can't remember if I've set one up. I think I did. Let's see. No, I haven't yet. So bear with me 1 second, and I will. So if that, I will put that in chat, and I'll also put it in the keeper for later use. So yeah, the information move, I will quickly go through that. So this is used when you are searching for a clue, conducting research, or otherwise gathering information. You describe how you're doing. So it's obviously in this case, this is just your kind of questioning of the barman, and you will roll with an appropriate ability. In this instance, I think that will be with your presence, which is your kind of general, charisma, confidence, etc. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's see what happens. It's a 10.
It's a 10, perfect. With the information move, on a hit, you will find a clue, and I will tell you what that is. On a 12 plus, with the information move, you will also find a mastermind clue, which kind of is about unveiling the machinations of the mastermind in the background. I'll also point out at this point, if at any point you can invoke the Janus Mask move, this essentially lets you upgrade the result of the roll you've just made by 1 stage. So from a miss to a partial success, from a partial success to a full success, and from a full success to a 12 plus. Mm-hmm. You do so by marking one of your masks. If you're marking a mask of the past, you do so by marking them in order. If you're marking a mask of the future, you choose to mark them in whichever order you see fit. You obviously don't have to do that now, but that's just as it's our first roll, that is an option that's always available to you. If particularly as well, if like I said, you can always use it if you just want to get a higher level of success than you have got already. But it's particularly useful when avoiding a particularly unpleasant failure. But
do I narrate and then you give me the clue, or I'm not sure.
We'll play things through a little bit, and I'll give you a clue over the course of it.
Okay.
But I think first we will go to I believe Fujisawa, you were investigating the Limehouse school. Yeah.
I think I changed my mind.
No, that's cool.
Okay. So I think Fujisawa's gonna run some errands and then maybe go to a betting shop, do her own thing for a little bit.
Okay, no, that's cool. We can come back to you in a moment if you wish. Unless there was anything you specifically wanted to do with that scene, but if you're just happy to just kind of be off doing your own thing, that's also cool.
I think I need to think about it, but I want to get one of my XP questions done. So.
No, that's cool. Yeah. That's cool. We can come back to that in a moment when you decide what you want to be doing. Yes. In which case we'll pop over to Priyanka. And you were, I believe, going to visit Jenny Johnston at the opium den.
That's right. And so to frame up the way the scene looks, I think that it's like a dark room in the den, and I'm already there in one of the back rooms, waiting for Jenny to come receive me. And like it's, I think that there's just like a couple of like gas lamps or like around that, you know, the light hits everything I'm wearing and it kind of almost shines it back because it's mostly like white linens, a little bit of gold accents, and then on my blindfold is like two rubies that are like positioned like eyes, and so everything else is dim and dark, and I'm just this like glowing thing in the center of it.
Awesome, that's cool. So yeah, Jenny Johnston's den is, it's a dim and smoky place. There's that kind of heavy ammonia-ish smell of opium drifting through, ever present, sort of baked into the walls of this place. And yeah, there are folk reclined on cushions and stuff in the various areas of this place. But the painting in question here is that people from all walks of life patronize Jenny Johnston's. And what do we see here that indicates this? And again, this is a question for everybody to answer.
Sorry, could you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah,
David?
no, certainly. People from all walks of life patronize Jenny Johnston's. What do we see that indicates this?
I think the thing that you see in this particular one is the camera does a slow pan down like an aisle between all of these mats where people are reclining. And the thing that it shows is just the shoes of the people who are laying there. And you see, you know, well-worn boots with holes in the soles next to like shining leather shoes, and the occasional high heel with a glittering buckle next to like bare, dirty feet. And it just pans over these feet that are kind of twitching nervously and, you know, relaxing, but they're all different styles and varieties.
I think that even though the clientele is quite mixed, there is still a sort of partitioned off section for the most elite of clientele who need the utmost sort of secrecy and discretion. So there is at one end of the den this sort of diaphanous curtain, and you can see the silhouettes of the people behind it holding their opium pipes, but you cannot see who exactly they are.
And maybe you also see kind of someone emerge from there, a servant clearly, or someone who works there, bringing a tray to them or from them, and you can see that they're being served or waited upon in some way by servants.
Excellent. Thank you. So Priyanka, Jenny will enter the room that you're in. She's one of those people. She's very calm in and of herself and has that kind of soothing disposition that spreads to other people. Quite pretty, though you know, probably past her prime. Wearing a dark taffeta gown. She is Chinese or of Chinese descent, and she will enter. And like I said, she will enter the room with you. I'm going to presume that she probably, from the fact that you sussed out the clue about the vampire, that at the very least she met you when reporting the problem, if you didn't have a pre-existing relationship. And I think she will enter. She has an opium pipe on sort of a tray with the various accoutrements alongside it, which she will put down on the tray next to you. But she will say, thank you for coming here. I assume you have come about the incidents we have been experiencing.
Yes, Mrs. Johnston. Oh, or should I say Miss?
Miss is fine, thank you.
Miss Johnston. Yes, I have come to take a look at the items you have been storing and make a more accurate determination based off of what you have told us.
Of course, I can take you down to the basement if you wish to see them. And she will kind of take a step back to allow you to follow. She will, in fact, I think, seeing that you have the blindfold on, I think she will offer her arm to you if you wish to take it, but she obviously won't insist.
I very gently but deftly loop my arm through hers, and not just the arm that she's offering, but then also place a gloved hand on her palm, like on the top of her hand.
Yeah, and she will lead you through the opium den to down some steps.
And as we're walking through this, I whisper gently into her ear, Miss Johnston, I hear the nimble feet of many people running around. Do you have many employees here at your establishment?
I have a few nephews and nieces who work here, yes.
Nephews and nieces, and any children of your own?
No. I have not started an immediate family.
Well, one must appreciate the gifts of extended family.
Indeed, indeed. And yes, she will kind of lead you down into the basement. It's kind of, you can feel that damp underground air. You're close to the river here as well, so it's particularly like I said, the area is particularly damp in the cellar here. And she will lead you over to where these three bodies are. They're probably like partially swaddled in sort of wrapping sheet, and stacked up on sort of low benches. They're probably mats have just been dragged down here from the opium den itself. As I said, yeah, the bodies are. There's a Chinese man who is still wearing kind of sailor's whites. There's a young woman, sort of in her probably early 20s, you'd say, and a young man who is soft Jimmy, and yeah, she will take you to those bodies, and kind of basically step back. She will hang around in here with you for the moment, but if you send her away, she will gladly leave. But she's happy for you to stay down here unaccompanied, but she's also happy to stay here if you want her company.
So my plan here is to do a cursory inspection of the bodies, but then also to use rites of salt and smoke to try to observe another place or time and witness the death of one of these people. Excellent.
So how do you how does it look as you kind of undertake the more ritual part of this, as you use your rites of salt and smoke?
Well, so I need a blood sacrifice, and so I think that the thing that I want to do is I think that after my cursory inspection of the bodies, the thing I come back over and I take Mrs. Johnston's hands and I say, Mrs. Johnston, I understand that putting an end to the troubles in this area is very important to you. Would you like to help me with that?
Of course, if there's anything we can do to stop these killings, especially before it draws any more attention, I will gladly do it.
And are you willing to do something a bit unorthodox to help me?
Well, I suppose unorthodox methods are why I came to you in the first place. I've heard some of the rumors.
So I just smile at her and then guide her back over to stand over. Let's see, where's the one that died in the schoolhouse? I think that's
the young woman, Chala Bell.
Okay, so yes, and I position us on either side of the corpse, and I ask her to close her eyes, and then when she's not looking, I pull a hairpin out of my coif and jab it into her palm very suddenly before she can react.
Excellent. So if you would like to make me a roll with sensitivity.
Cool. And my sensitivity is, I believe, a 1. Yes. +1. That is an 11.
11, excellent. So on the 10 plus, the magic works without further cost. And you've already said that you wanted to observe another place or time. So we will we'll come back to that in a moment. So we'll take a break in a second, and we'll just take a quick 5-minute break. Yeah, I just want to check in, Fujisawa. Was there? Did you have any thoughts about like a little scene you might like to frame up as you go about your day?
Sure. I can even do it as a little vignette if that's
sure. No, that sounds good.
Appropriate. So I think back at Hargrave House, we see Fujisawa going about sort of her daily duties. We see her refreshing the flowers in a nice, ornate vase in the reception hall. We see her cleaning the mirrors and putting away the tea. And then we see her head out of the house and into London. She hails a carriage that takes her out, I think, going north to the edge of the city, perhaps during the carriage ride, as we see the vistas of London pass. She's thumbing through her A to Z guide to London. And we see her, when she reaches her destination, enter a bedding shop. And as she crosses the threshold, it's her posture completely changes. She's always very kind of straight up and down, but when she walks in, it's finally she can relax and breathe. And she goes up to the bookie, asks which horses are running today, asks for the one that has the best payout, not the best odds, but the best payout, and slaps a handful of coins down on the counter. And then we cut to her in this sea of black waistcoats and white shirts, and her in her sky blue kimono, and all these men around her are cheering raucously for their horse of choice, and her voice joins them, joins the chorus as her horse, the worst bet pulls into the first place.
Awesome. That's lovely. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, I think we'll take a quick break there. We'll say about 5 minutes, come back about 20 past, and then we'll resolve those two actions, and then probably move into the night phase after that. So yeah, I'll see you all back in a few minutes. So, Lady Camila, you are.
So I just had the interaction with the barkeep.
Indeed. So yeah, the barman Franklin will say,
Franklin.
yeah. So
Take me to where you found the body.
Sure
And on the
thing.
way there, you will tell me everything you know and leave no detail out, no matter how unseemly. I assure you, you cannot shock me in any way.
Of course, ma'am.
Proceed.
And he will kind of come out from behind the bar and lead you out. There's kind of a side door that leads onto the alley that you saw before. And he says, so yeah, it was just down here. And he'll just kind of point to sort of the a little bit further up the alley from the doorway. But he'll say it was just down here. I found him. It was after I came to clean up at the end of the night. I was just out here emptying the slops, and I found him just lying there, still as you like. It was strange, and I we'd Jenny Johnston, don't know if you know her, runs a little place around the corner, a little boarding house, and she'd said that she'd had some similar problems at her place, so she came here, got rid of the body for me. She said it's best we don't involve the police. I mean, they never come in and help out, none around here. I can tell you that. It just caused problems. So yeah, that's what we did. But honestly, I can't tell you much more than that. I didn't hear nothing. Didn't hear no struggle, nothing like that.
Do you know this man?
Yeah. Chow Dong-hai, I think his name was. I mean, sailors, they come and go around here. I think he has had a mate you might find around. He might be in here later on this evening, I guess, if he's still on shore leave. Who
name?
And you see him kind of consider for a moment. So what's it?
Come, form a sentence.
Lin, I think. Lin Bohai.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think it's that. You might, like I said, you might find him. You might find him in here later, or he'll be in one of the boarding houses. If not, there's plenty around to see. But you said not to stint on any details, ma'am. And I mean, this, you'll think I mean, it's probably nothing. It's just some kids playing games or something like that. But it's
no
only
detail is unimportant. Please, Franklin, share it with me.
So I've been hearing this this kid's voice, and he will sort of point to where you are in this alleyway, usually out here or around here somewhere. Never actually seen him saying it, but just calling out on my customers for being drunkards, telling them to fix their ways and clean up, and like I said, it's probably just kids playing some sort of game or something, but it's been happening. It's only been happening last few days, maybe a bit longer than that, but it's odd. That's what it is. It's odd. I mean, and it was out here where we found him, where people had said they'd heard it coming from. So I don't know. Make of that what you will, man. So yeah, the clue that you will get from this is a drunkard claims a small childlike voice from the shadows has been castigating them for their excessive drinking.
Got it. And Lady Camila puts a gloved hand on Franklin's chest. You've done very well, Franklin. And then she brings her hand up to his beard and just runs her thumb just lightly across his lips and across the beard. You just have a crumb here. Thank you for your help. And she turns around and she walks out.
Yeah, and he will be doing a good fish impression as you walk off. Excellent. So yeah, we'll come back around to you, Priyanka, as Jenny will let out a gasp as you plunge the pin into her hand. She doesn't cry out, but it definitely took her by surprise. And as her blood drips down onto the corpse of Chala Bell, you will
I'd love to describe like the magic-y part of it.
yeah, no, go for it, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so as the blood kind of like rushes out of Jenny's hand and drips down onto the corpse, there's almost like this weird kind of like sensation of like the tide coming in and like washing over us. And then like it's almost as if like we tip over and then suddenly the corpse is standing upright and we're like perpendicular to it, floating in midair. And everything is like washed in like red tinge, and like it's kind of like flowing like we're underwater or something like that. And it's both me and Jenny's also seeing it. But like we fall into the moments of this girl's death.
Yeah. And I think what you will see, and it's dark and it's shadowy, even kind of beyond the in many ways, possibly the lighting you're kind of seeing through your vision is maybe even better than it would have been in the actual scene, but it's that very kind of stark and strange shadows and shifting images. But I think you see this woman, Chala Bell, walking down an alley. She has like a package in her, a bundle of like shopping basically in her hands, and you just see a shadowy movement, clearly, you know, child-sized, rush out of the shadows in the alleyway, and almost doing that thing, you know, where kids kind of like wrap themselves up in their mum's skirts kind of thing. But you hear her let out a yelp of pain as she's bitten, and like there is a a moment where she staggers and almost kind of like as she falls, like the vision almost seems to like dim slightly as her sort of life essence runs out. But then you see just sort of it's almost like you've kind of zoomed out a little, and you can just see that like this crumpled lump. It's clearly her body just lying in the alleyway, and as and this like smaller figure rifling through the packaging, the packages that she's sort of carrying, and you see a milk bottle sort of thrown against the wall, and it shatters, and milk runs down the wall, and and like a bag that's thrown in, and like just sweets are just strewn sort of around the floor, little sort of humbugs just kind of glistening in the lamplight of the alleyway. And yes, the clue you get there is violently discarded milk and sweets.
And I assume that the vision kind of like fades back in.
Yeah.
We shift back and like are once again upright. And that's the point where I let go of Jenny's hand, and my white gloves are stained with crimson red blood. And I just tilt my head and I say, does any of that strike a memory for you? Do you think there was anything in there that you might need to share with me?
And Jenny will kind of rub at the puncture wound on her hand and say, "No, I nothing I can think of. But it does remind me. I know Charla. She worked at the workhouse, but she did have children of her own. Her husband." Her husband's been around. He's been complaining about me keeping the body here. He wants to bury her, obviously, and I mean, I don't blame him. We just need a bit more time to work this out.
I think it's very important that you do not bury this body before we're done. And you should probably lock the door when you leave.
Of course.
And I just want to make sure that we're very clear on this. It's not to keep other people out. It's to potentially keep something in.
And yeah, I think she will pale slightly and say, "Of course, if that is what is required, I will have one of my nephews keep a watch."
And then Priyanka, at this point, starts to pull off the gloves and then sets them in, presses them into Jenny's palm so that they soak up more of the blood, and then turns and walks up the stairs, completely unaided and still blindfolded, and moves to leave the den. But the last thing that you see is as we raise up the stairs and into the relative bright light of the den, we're just rubbing the blood that seeped through the gloves into our skin.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So, as I said, we're gonna roll into the evening phase now, just so we can
David?
kind of. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh yeah,
a mechanical question. It's about one of my moves. I don't quite understand what this part means. Where it says I should tell the keeper to lower the mastermind clue threshold on the mastermind sheet by 1.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that is cool. I will be taking that into account. But yeah, basically, the mastermind sheet that I will be running that details the mastermind you are dealing with will has a number of basically events that trigger at certain, once you've acquired a certain number of mastermind clues, and essentially with the explorer in play, all of those numbers are reduced by 1, so you kind of get to the mastermind a bit quicker.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
No worries, no problem. Awesome. So, going into the dusk, sorry, I should say not evening, but yes, the dusk phase. For the dusk phase, the first thing we will always do is resolve any playbook moves or any custom moves that are resolved during the dusk phase. I do not believe that any of you currently have a move that is triggered in the dusk phase, though do shout out if I am incorrect on that front. So we'll move on to the next step, which is I will pose a paint scene question about Hargrave House to the players. These basically are just little questions we'll do. You'll see them on the very left-hand column in the character keeper, about a little ways down. There's a list of these questions if you want to follow along. These are basically just to establish a little bit more information about Hargrave House. And I think we will actually start off with the reception hall, which is the first one on that list. And again, this is a paint scene question, so it's to all of you. So do you feel unsettled or at home when you enter Hargrave House? And what do you perceive in the reception hall that reinforces this feeling? So yeah, if any of you has any thoughts on that.
Do we all live at Hargrave House?
Yes, you do all live there. That it is your yes, in fact, sorry, I haven't done a proper explainer on Hargrave House yet. It is essentially the place that you live and work. It is both, like, obviously the actual physical building itself and the organization essentially that you are part of. It is presumed that you as player characters are the only inhabitants of Hargrave House. That may change over time, but it's it's not necessarily a bustling and lively place. It is basically just yourselves there. Though it's a very big house. It's a big old like Gothic mansion in the otherwise very sort of straight-laced neoclassical environs of Belgravia. So yes, but yes, that's it. I will rephrase the question, which is yeah. Do you feel unsettled or at home when you enter Hargrave House? And what do you perceive in the reception hall that reinforces this feeling?
I think Lady Camila feels a little unsettled in Hargrave House. And as she enters after the trip to the pub, and I think a servant takes her cloak. And in the reception area, there are a number of mirrors on either side. And there's something about these mirrors that when she looks at them, catches in her peripheral vision, the mirrors catch her eye as if some shadow is skittering. And every time she enters the reception hall, she has this sense that some shadows are skittering within the world behind the mirrors, and that irritates her.
Excellent, excellent.
I think that Fujisawa is likewise unsettled when she comes home to Hargrave House. I think there's a kind of anonymity to being out in the city, out in London, out in the hustle and bustle, even though she doesn't quite blend in as a young Japanese woman who wears Japanese clothing typically. But there's a way that she can pretend that she's just one of the crowd. But when she gets home and the first thing she sees are the white lilies and red roses that she's painstakingly arranged in vases, the mirrors that she has painstakingly polished, and she sees her reflection, and and remembers that he or she has to be Fujisawa, not whoever she is on the outside.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much.
When Priyanka arrives back at Hargrave House, there is a sense of familiarity about the reception hall that greets her and makes them feel comfortable. And that's because the reception hall, opens up onto a large staircase that opens up onto a viewing gallery from the second floor. And it reminds them very much of being a child. And the extravagant parties that their parents used to throw back in India, and about looking down at all the people and all the people being seen. And now they feel almost like they're one of the people being seen.
Excellent. Thank you. So the next thing we'll be doing is we'll just quickly go around, and again, I'll just go through this in character keeper order, just to see what you want to get up to this night phase. I will sort of do the usual reminder that, like I said, in the night phase, I sort of do reserve the right to occasionally throw bits of curveballs at people, and will sometimes frame you into other scenes. But I will always try and at least consider your wishes for the scenes, as it were. So yeah, Lady Camila, what would you? So what we'll do is I'll go around in order. And just ask you for sort of what you want to do, like one thing you want to try and do this evening, and then once we've gone around what everyone wants, I'll then go back around just to recheck in again if you want to like choose different course of action at that point. Then feel free to do so once you've heard what other people are planning. But yeah, Lady Camila, what are your plans for the evening?
Can I pass and go afterwards?
Sure. That's
right.
fine. I don't have an issue with that as long as not everyone does that. It will be fine. So yeah, Fujisawa, how about yourself?
I think she wants to go to the docks to see if she can find any of the sailors who might have known Xiao Donghai.
Sure thing. Yeah, that's cool. And Priyanka, how about yourself?
I think that we will want to make a visit to the husband of Charla Belle, and also maybe just wander around the streets of Limehouse for a bit of an evening stroll, maybe potentially taking a very fine whiskey from the Hargrave cellar with us. Sure.
That sounds good. And yeah, Lady Camila.
Yeah, I think in the same, I have the same ideas, Fujisawa, which is to find this man, Lin Bonhee, I think Bohee was his name, the friend of Zhao Donghee, who was the victim at the pub. And yeah, and so maybe we could go together.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I'll just check in again. So yeah, Fujisawa, are you cool with that course of action? And yeah, are you interested in working together with Lady Camila on this?
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. And yeah, Priyanka, are you still happy with your sort of course of action?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So the last thing that we will do is to introduce the unseen. So this is basically a little mechanic that we play about with, where we'll have a number of prompts, and these work a bit like paint the scene prompts. Some of these will be paint the scenes where everyone gives an answer. Some of them will be ones where just one person will give a particular answer. And what we'll do is for each of them, there will be like four different options, four different questions essentially that we'll work through in order. What I'll be sort of doing is I will be calling on you in turn to answer one of these questions as part of the this description that will kind of run alongside the scenes that we do in London itself. or well, these also take place in London, but the sort of the scenes that we see your characters involved in. The point of these paint the scene questions, also these unseen questions, is that they will show us other stuff happening in and around London as your investigation is proceeding. They are not in any way linked to the investigation. It's not sort of a these are just like the lives of other people going about their business in London as a whole. What we are looking to do though is I mentioned earlier about echoes in the night. An echo in the night is basically when you describe something happening in a scene as you're sort of investigating that relates to something that's been described in one of the unseen scenes that we've seen. So for example, if I'm trying to think of one of the examples Jason uses in the book, but yeah, I think like if for instance in an unseen scene we see a courtesan with a great bowl full of roses, red roses, in her dressing room, you might make an echo in the night in a scene by either referencing a red rose trampled underfoot in an alleyway, or a bowl filled with bright red blood, or anything that kind of has a sort of thematic tie back to an unseen. Or you can also do vice versa, so you can introduce in an unseen a detail that like calls back to something that's already happened in the in the regular scenes themselves. And basically, if you manage to get an echo in the night in your descriptions, then you'll get a point of XP in the dawn phase. So that's kind of that thing. But yeah, like I said, the actual unscenes themselves just there as a kind of showing us a bit more of London as we explore it, and to act as a sort of thematic tie into that. So I think that we are going to go with the Belfort murder as our unseen for tonight. I am actually just going to double check in. This is a this one does have a because I think we do have an ask first on this. Yeah, so this is a scene that can potentially involve some intimate partner violence. It does obviously will result in one or other of the characters murdering the other. Just so people are aware of that up ahead. If anyone wants to call a line or whatever on this one, feel free to do so. But we'll just be aware when we go into this that while we are describing this, we do have a veil on direct interpersonal intimate partner violence. So just keep that in mind, and when we go through this one. But I think we will go with it as long as everyone's cool with that. So yeah, the Belfort murder. Charles and Nancy Belfort have been married for 10 years and they absolutely despise each other. Tonight is the night when one of them will finally snap. So our first question for this one is going to be a paint the scene one, which is going to be for everyone. The second one is going to be for Jose. The third one is going to be for L. And the fourth one is going to be for Daryl. And this one, if you want to find it in the tab, the London at Night, the Unseen tab, it's on the very right column, almost at the bottom, the Belfort murder. So as we kick off our paint scene, as we kick off with this unseen, I will ask everyone the first paint the scene question. So as we look around the Belfort's home, how do we know their love for one another died long ago?
On the mantle over the fireplace is a framed portrait of them in their wedding clothes. Bright smiles, beautiful outfits, but A long time ago, it fell and the glass in front of the portrait has cracked right down the middle. And they've never bothered to replace it.
I think that their dining table is set for dinner. And although their children are adults and have gotten married and gotten their own homes quite a long time ago, the place settings on the table are each at the opposite ends, as far away as possible from one another.
Yeah, I was having a similar image actually, a similar image to both of those actually. So I'll just keep going with it. That in the bedroom, there are two separate beds and with a nightstand in between. And the nightstand, it looks like it's like, there's a line right through the nightstand where you can really see exactly like they never touch. What the objects on one side are Charles's and the objects on the other sides are Nancy's, and clearly never do the twain meet.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we will zoom back in on the dock side of Limehouse. It's probably about as well in terms of the dockside activity. It's probably about as quiet as it ever gets at this time of the evening, though there are plenty of people out drinking and drinking with each other out here, and generally kind of unwinding after a long day's hard labor. I think I'm just going to ask basically Fujisawa, Lady Camila, how are the two of you sort of together as you're navigating the crowds on the dockside? What sort of both how are you with one another and how are you kind of going about your task?
I think Lady Camila is for these kinds of missions, she dresses in drag. So she's in a suit, and she has her hair tied up in a bun underneath a hat. So at a casual glance, she appears to be a man in the darkness. She's found it easier to navigate London at night in a man's garb. And so she's done that in this case.
And I think that Fujisawa, unless Lady Camila tells her otherwise, is walking just like a couple of paces behind, close enough that it's clear that we're out together, but at a sort of respectful, almost, reverent distance.
Excellent. So I think what I'm going to do here is, and then this isn't something I'll always do, but I think this is a good opportunity, if nothing else, just to showcase the move. I think probably Lady Camila at the minute, because you're taking the lead, I'm going to ask you to make the night move to try and track down Linbo High. Yeah, I will in fact write that name down so that I but yeah, I think it seems like because it's quite busy, and it's not the safest part of town. This is probably a good opportunity to showcase that move. So the way that the night move works is when you do something risky or face something you fear, you name what you're afraid will happen if you fail or lose your nerve. I will tell you how it is worse than you fear. And then, yeah, so, and I think that this will probably... I can see this being either composure or reason, probably, but I think you have the same in both. So, you know, whichever is it's fine. But yeah, what are you afraid will happen if this goes badly for you?
I think I'm afraid, for some reason I'm coming up that I'm afraid for Fujisawa for some reason, that she might be harmed in some way. If we encounter a threat that we can't deal with together.
Yeah, and I think it's worse than that. Yeah, I think if this goes badly, then Fujisawa will be the next victim of the Limehouse Lurker, as it attacks
Sorry
from
there,
the shadows.
Fuji. Was a gut answer.
But yeah, if you would like to, if you'd like to make that roll.
Okay. So.
Oh, and I should say as well, just again as a reminder, rather than there's
Mhm.
necessarily something you need to do now. If you wish to mark an item on your personal quarters that you think will help, that will give you advantage on the roll, which is to say you'll roll 3 dice and keep the 2 highest. You may not have anything that works. You may not wish to on this roll, but just as a reminder for future, that is an option you have available.
And once they're marked, they're never unmarked, right?
In general, yes. There are some exceptions to that, and I think most playbooks have an option where you can, when you get an advancement, where you can unmark all of the ones that you have currently marked. But yeah, in general, it's a one use thing. You can still technically like use the item for fictional positioning. You just can't get the advantage for it more than once.
Yeah, I don't think I'll mark an item for personal quarters. Famous last words, right? Here we go. So it's just a +1 on this, and we're looking for Limbo Heat or Bohai. Oh my, snake eyes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wouldn't have mattered what I did.
Yeah. So as you are searching the streets of Limehouse, you're looking for Lin Bohai. You check a few of the haunts where you know he's likely to be around, but you don't find him. You're taking a shortcut through an alleyway over to one of the boarding houses. Fujisawa, a few steps behind you, when there is a sudden... you probably just hear, in fact, the rustling sound of silks as Fujisawa is borne down to the ground. This small figure leaps out of the shadows and hits almost like a sort of rugby tackle, and knocks Fujisawa to the ground. The figure climbs up and has surprisingly strong, if small, fingers clasped into her shoulders as it goes in to bite at her neck. We can either continue with this and see where it goes, or if you wish, you can mark one of your masks, and we will see a slightly different outcome to that roll.
Wow, we are definitely going to mark a mask. I just have to figure out, there are various masks, right? Okay.
Yeah. So yes, as I said, you can. So you have 3 options available to you here. You can mark your mask of the past. If you mark a mask of the past, you have to basically mark the first one that you haven't yet marked.
Okay.
And at some point in the future, it doesn't have to be right now, but probably by the end of the session, you'll have to answer the question that is that gives you. The second option is to mark a mask of the future. You can pick those in any order you wish, and they will have some effect on your character depending on which one you pick. The third option you have is to mark the Mask of the Sun, which is the threat mask for the Limehouse Lurker. If you mark that, you don't know exactly what will happen, but yeah, that will. That's the third option you have available to you. So yeah, pick which one you would like.
Oh, the last one was the Mask of the Sun. I don't know what that's going to do.
No,
basically.
that's correct.
If I pick,
yeah.
I just pick it and then hope for
Yeah,
the best.
Exactly.
How about? I'm just looking at the masks of the future for a moment. I don't think we're ready for those. All right, why don't we do the Mask of this? Well, I'll do the flashback.
Sure.
The Mask of the Past.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, we will see a slightly different outcome play out there. But first, we're going to go to our next unseen scene. So I believe actually we're going to go back to you, Jose. So yes. Yeah, indeed. So, Jose, narrate a scene in which Charles does something to get under Nancy's skin.
So I imagine they've sat down to dinner and it's just the two of them on opposite sides of the table, as has been described. And they're not having any conversation at the moment. And Nancy has prepared some kind of stew, and his name is Charles. Charles begins slurping his stew in a very loud way because he knows it drives Nancy insane when he does so. And we can see Nancy gritting her teeth on the other side of the table, but not saying anything as the slurping continues. And a smirk appears on Charles's face.
Excellent, thank you. Priyanka, so yeah, I think we can just see you arriving at the home of, well, Charla Bell, and specifically here, her husband, Rory Bell. I assume you're just going to kind of knock at the door when you arrive.
That's right. Quick knock at the door, lean rather close to it. And I have changed my clothes for the evening. I'm no longer wearing like the white outfit, but I'm wearing basically a near identical outfit that is in black, except for still the white blindfold.
Cool. Rory Bell, her husband, will answer the door. He comes to the door. He's covered in soot. He has kind of a sour smell about him, possibly just from not having bathed recently. And he just generally has that kind of like hangdog look. He looks clearly is upset by his wife's death, obviously, but just has that kind of look that you probably think he's got just a kind of gloomy countenance in general, even without that additional threat. And he says, what can I do for you? Are you? It's going to kind of look you up and down and say, are you collecting for a charity or something?
Mr. Bell, I hope you don't mind me imposing so late in the evening. Your information and address were passed on to me by Mrs. Johnston. May I come in?
Yeah, I guess so. I assume this is about Charla.
Indeed. I hope I'm not imposing too late. Do you have children who might be asleep? I can be quiet.
yeah, they're asleep, but they can't come in. It will be fine. And he'll kind of lead you in, and yeah, it's a small it's a small house. It's there is just a kind of kitchen, living room, dining room, downstairs, and presumably some a sleeping area upstairs. But he'll kind of grab a cloth and make an effort to kind of dust off one of the chairs and sort of offers it to you. And he says, yeah, please sit down. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like old Jenny. I've been in her place from time to time. It's a nice place. She helped me and Charlie out once when we were having money trouble, but I don't. How much longer does my wife's body have to stay there? We should get the police involved. I don't know. Begging your pardon, but I don't know what she's hoping to do, and I don't know what you're doing here about this.
Priyanka does not take the seat, instead goes and stands by the mantle and runs their fingers over some of the objects there, including child's toys and a very simple but well-polished wedding photo and some other accoutrement of the house, and doesn't look at Mr. Bell, but says, I really do understand, Mr. Bell. You must be going through such a hard time with this loss. I understand that it is a very painful experience, and especially one that you can't even start to process because you can't bury your wife. But I assure you that this is all for the purpose of making sure that we don't have to bury many other people.
And he'll kind of nod, slightly dejected, and say, of course, I suppose. Just what can I do to help? I mean, of course, I want to see whoever done this get what's coming to him, but
Priyanka very quickly closes the distance between the two of them and looks up into Mr. Bell's face, but still is blindfolded, and so instead of eyes, it's just those small rubies shining up at him, and says, I need you to tell me very quickly the first thing that comes to your mind. There have been other deaths here. What has stood out recently? What are the things that have bothered you even before your wife died? You seem a perceptive man. You seem like someone who hears a lot of things. Would you tell me? And I place a hand on his chest to further disarm him.
Excellent. Yeah. I'd like you to make the information move, please, with presence.
So my presence is a +2. It's almost like I did that on purpose. And that is a 9.
9. Okay. He says, lilies, and he kind of shakes his head. There were lilies left outside the house a few times, a few days in a row. Then when she was dead, they stopped. It was never like a bunch or anything like that. Just a few lilies just out there on the doorstep. And then he almost kind of like blinks, almost as if he kind of hadn't thought that himself before, kind of thing. So, do you think that has anything to do with it? I don't know. I hadn't thought too much about it. Just maybe someone had left them there, or but I think he'll say, I and I think, but after that, he takes a pause and says, I should let you know as well. I just happened to bump into Constable Constable Lance in the other earlier this evening. I mentioned about what happened to Charlotte. I didn't say nothing about where she was. I just said that there'd been an attack. He needs to. We need to get the authorities involved, and no matter what Jenny says. So I'm sorry for that. You know, winds her up or whatever. But you know, there's things that need to be done.
I understand, Mr. Bell. I understand that in situations where you feel wronged, that it makes sense to reach out to someone who could potentially make it a little bit right. You haven't done anything wrong here. And once again, I'm sorry for your loss. I've disturbed you too much. Please, I'll show myself out.
Brilliant, thank you. I've just put that clue on that there were lilies left at Charles' door. And so, yeah, we'll go on to our next unseen. So I think this one is for Elle. So, yeah, narrate a scene in which Nancy humiliates Charles.
I think that in the midst of dinner, there's a knock at the door. And there's a moment where Charles and Nancy are looking at each other, each willing each other with their eyes to be the one to get it. But after a moment, Nancy sort of huffs and goes to greet whoever this visitor is. And she's glad she does, because standing there is a quite handsome young man, clearly younger than her, with a bouquet of lilies that he presents to her. And there's clearly like a very close rapport between Nancy and this visitor. And very casually, clearly not caring whether Charles hears it, and certainly not caring what he thinks about it, she's saying to this young man, "Oh no, I'm sorry, he's here tonight, we can't. But you know how he is with his whiskey with dinner. He'll be out in a few hours. Come back and we'll see what we can do." And they agree, perhaps, and share like a very quick kiss. And she returns to the dining room, sets the bouquet of flowers in a vase, and takes her seat again, without saying a word to Charles, just smiling at him, daring him to say something about it.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And yeah, this is we will go back to the Lady Camila and Fujisawa as the pair of you are searching for Linbo High, and yeah, you head down an alleyway, and on like the back steps of a boarding house, you'll see a man in kind of slightly grubby sailor's whites, sharing a bottle with another couple of men. They're kind of chatting with one another. And this definitely seems to be he's a Chinese man. He is just grabbing his description. Yeah, he's got kind of a handsome grin. You'll see as he's kind of chatting and laughing with the friends around him. As you get closer, he has that sort of briny smell to him, and yeah, so these dingy sailor's whites. He will kind of look up and see you as you approach. Probably doesn't necessarily pay like a huge amount of mind to Lady Camila in her current kind of man suit sort of thing. But I definitely think that Fujisawa will draw a kind of an interested look from him, and he'll kind of raise the bottle he's holding in a sort of greeting. As you do this, though, we see. I think this is possibly not something necessarily that the two of you notice, though you might kind of get that feeling of being watched. But we will just see a pair of eyes reflecting like a cat's from the gloom of a nearby alleyway. And Lady Camila, if you can take the condition marked by the lurker, please. But yes, you will. You have managed to find Limbo High, and I think assuming you're kind of moving towards him with some purpose, you will look up at the two of you and say, "Good evening. Can I help the two of you?" And he will sort of pat sort of the step next to him and say, "There's join me for a drink if you want. It's passable rum." And he'll kind of grin again as he takes a swig.
I think that Fujisawa gives Lady Camila a quick look, not quite for approval, just like, I hope you don't mind that I'll take the lead. And she'll take the seat next to Lin Bohai. And in like kind of halting Chinese, she only really speaks a little bit. She'll thank him for his hospitality, and fishes out from the obi, the belt of her kimono, the flask that she always keeps hidden there, and she raises it and says, "Cheers. You can have some of this if you like. It's more than possible. It's Baiju, Chinese liquor. Devil to get here in London."
Very kind of you, Miss. And he will he'll kind of take the flask from you with a sort of nod of thanks, and take a sip and say, "That takes me back. It's been far too long since I've had a drop of this stuff. Not been on a clipper back home for a while now."
As it happens, my friend, she looks over at Lady Camila, is also quite well traveled. Perhaps you've been to some of the same places.
Yeah, maybe. I've certainly been around the block a bit. And he'll kind of give another grin.
I think Lady Camila hears the invitation from Fujisawa, but she's feeling watched by someone not immediately apparent. And so she just tips her hat to the two of them, and then she goes over and leans against a wall and lights a cigarette. And she's scanning the alleyway, and she sees something in the reflection of a broken window pane across the alleyway, like the darting of a shadow.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, I think yeah, Lin Bahai is going to sort of make polite chit chat in you know, unless you kind of steer the conversation, Fujisawa. I presume you are going to kind of start asking him about his friend, or yeah.
Yeah, I think she lets him talk for a while, lets the liquor warm him up, especially. And it's clear that she's very skilled at finding the exact moment of the conversation to like insert her own desires and her own what she wants out of it. And I think there's a moment maybe that he kind of mentions Zhao Donghai obliquely, and she takes that. She says, "I heard what happened. I'm so very sorry. I know what it's like to be far away from home without a friend. You must miss him terribly."
Yeah, excellent. And I think I'm going to ask here for you to make the information move. Again, this will probably be with presence at this stage.
Sure. It's a 13.
Nice. Excellent. So we'll come back to that in a moment. I'm just going to take a quick break for a couple of moments if people need, and then we'll come back. We'll do our last unseen. We'll resolve that, and then we'll kind of wrap up for the evening. We may go over by a few minutes if that's okay with people. If anyone has a hard out, that's fine. But other than that, we'll see you back in, like I said, just in a couple of minutes' time if that's enough time for people. So, firstly, Priyanka, if you would like to give us our last unseen prompt of the evening. The question for you is, which of the two can't take it any longer? Describe them murdering the other one. Are they happy at the end?
Yeah, so the lights are out at the house. The only light in the scene is coming from the fireplace, which is burned low. Charles is asleep on the sofa, and the silhouettes of the wife's name?
Nancy.
Nancy. Yeah, so the silhouettes of Nancy and her gentleman caller are kind of cascaded over his unconscious body. And we hear her off camera say, "See, what did I tell you? I knew he'd drink himself to death again, just like he does every night. Good thing he left a couple of shots left in the bottle, so at least we can start our evening off right." And then the gentleman chuckles, and you hear the clink of glasses as they take their sips. And then Nancy says, "Oh, it always burns going down." And then you hear the sounds of them start kissing. And then all of a sudden there's a cough. And then there's another cough. And then suddenly they're both coughing. And then there's a crash as they collapse onto the ground. And they're twitching and flailing. And then suddenly they're very still. And then the camera zooms close on Charles's face, and he opens his eyes, stone sober. He smiles. And that's that.
Nice, thank you very much. So, as Lin Bohai is talking to you, Fujisawa, he says, it was the we'd known each other for years. He was a good man. He was a good man, a good sailor, a good friend. I want to find whoever did this to him. I mean, I have to be out of port in a week's time. Our ship's due to sail, but I wanted to find out what happened to him before I go. I was at the Dog and Whistle when they found him. He'd gone out to answer a call of nature, and then when I heard the barman say that they found someone dead outside, and I went out and found him, and it was the strangest thing. He was just lying there looking so peaceful, but around the strangest thing about it all was there were these bats just circling around like a flock of ravens or something. I've never seen the like of it, certainly not here in London. And that's, I don't know. Please, if you can help find him, I'd find who did this. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
Fujisawa and Lady Camila share that look, and I think Fujisawa gets the sense that Lady Camila wants to kind of discuss or reconvene. So Fujisawa kind of touches Lynn reassuringly on the shoulder and says, "Yes, my friend and I aim to find out all we can about what happened to your friend. Thank you for sharing this. I know it was difficult. You can keep the flask."
Thank you. Well, perhaps if you can find me with good news before I set sail, I will return it to you. He kind of gives a half smile at that. And while this is going on, because on the 12 plus on the information move, you will always earn a Mastermind Clue. As this is the first Mastermind Clue that we will be receiving this evening. Lady Camila, as you are, as you said, you're kind of scanning around you. Your attention is caught for a moment by a flittering shadow, and as you turn back, you'll see a man walking through the alley, probably in fact coming from the direction of Jenny Johnston's. He's dressed in a very similar manner to you, a fairly kind of nondescript suit, but you can just kind of tell, probably again, it's like the shoes that give it away, that the shoes he is wearing are clearly kind of, handmade shoes, and he is walking with a cane that has a gold tip to it, a gold head on it that's in the shape of a falcon, and he has like a mane of like curly gold hair that sort of is shining under the lamplight. And as he is walking through this alley, he will double take as he sees you, and take a step towards you, and he'll kind of drop a sort of nod to you as he steps in closer and say, "My word, is that you, Lady Camila? Quite the get-up you have there." You will recognize him. He is Lucien Belasyse, the fourth Earl of Fauconberg, Lord Fauconberg. He's in his sort of like late 20s, early 30s. You probably knew his father and his mother. His father is dead by quite some time. He died about a decade ago. Lucien inherited when he was quite young. His mother is Lady Meredith. You said you are probably aware of you were probably aware of them both socially, and you may still have some contact with Lady Meredith. Lord Fauconberg is a kind of is seen as a bit of a young man, seems a bit of a fop and a dandy. Has a lot of sort of connections with the arts world and so on and so forth. But he will say, and what brings you to Limehouse of an evening? I thought you could probably find far more salubrious places to hang about than this.
I do enjoy a walk amongst the less desirable neighborhoods of London from time to time. And so do you, Lord Fauconberg. By the look of it, your outfit is no less dissembling of your true nature, isn't it?
Indeed, I suppose those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. What? Yes, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Polite society is all well and good if polite company is what you're looking for. He kind of looks around, and I think you probably see him, running his eyes up and down Limbo High. Says, I like to keep things a little interesting.
We share that in common then, my lord.
Well, I suppose we should, for decorum's sake, pretend that we did not meet in passing here, but I do hope you have whatever entertainment may be found here. I'm sure we shall speak again soon. My dear mother, I'm sure, would love to have you for dinner. And he'll kind of offer a short bow to you.
Enjoy your evening, my lord, as I will mine.
And with that, he will smile. He will nod to Fujisawa as well, and with that, we'll head up the alleyway, and that is where we will leave things for this evening. So we will go into the dawn phase quickly. So for the dawn phase, we will. Again, I said this is mostly just a cleanup thing. So if we had completed a threat, we would collect rewards here, but we haven't yet. We answer our dawn questions now. So I'll just run through these quickly, just because I think it's better if we do it while we still have it close in mind rather than putting off till next time. Dawn questions. So the generic ones for everyone are: did the hunters answer a question, which is no, and did the hunters resolve a threat, which is also no. So we'll I'm sure get closer to that next time. So I will now go in for the personal ones. So Lady Camila, did you experience an echo in the night?
Yes, Lady Camila in the alleyway saw the reflection in the broken window pane, which echoes the broken picture glass in the couples on the couple's mantle.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Thank you very much. And did you leverage your social status to gain the upper hand?
Yes, I think she did that in the pub scene.
Yep, I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. And did you use your loyalty to Her Majesty to justify your brutal actions?
No, Lady Camila's brutality was not in evidence this episode.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. That's fair. So yeah, you can mark 2 XP for that. Fujisawa, did you experience an echo in the night?
I did. The gentleman callers lilies.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Did you have a scene showing your secret private life in London?
Went to the racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you subtly express sexual desire for your employer in the way you dressed them or served them?
I think I did when I was doing
No,
his hair. Yeah.
I definitely thought so as well. Yeah, no, that was perfect. And Priyanka, did you experience an echo in the night?
Yes, the contrast between the broken marriage portrait and then the happy home portrait that was tragically unhappy.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Did you counsel someone using your supernatural affinities as the basis for that advice?
Yes, lock up the corpses so they don't become vampires.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. And did you perform a ritual?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Awesome. So that is where we will wrap things up for tonight. I believe you do owe us a
mask.
A mask.
Should I do that next time?
I'm happy for you to do that next time if you're cool with that. Yeah, I mean, if you have like a
Fine.
burning idea right now, we could do it. But yeah, otherwise, I think probably leave it for next time.
Yeah, we can leave it for next time.
Yeah, cool. I will narrate our a final little stinger scene that we get. So we will see, and it's probably the next morning. We're in a big like attic room with a big lots of like skylights above it. It's flooded with golden light from the early morning sun, and we see Lord Fauconberg. He's, like I said, he's got his long golden wavy hair down around his shoulders. He's wearing kind of a smock shirt that's like half open, as he is painting on a large canvas. It's a big, it's a sort of very impressionistic view of London seen from above. More capturing the life and the light of the city than capturing it in detail. But we do see kind of a hint of blood red washed into the images around Limehouse. And as we kind of come in on him, and we see him adding some splashes of paint, and we can see the sign. So we can see kind of Hargrave House is sort of Gothic spires being painted in quick dabs of paint onto this scene of I said London splayed out below it, and above it flies a giant golden falcon shedding light over the city. We just see him kind of take a step back and smile broadly as he looks at his work. He reaches out and pats. There's a small falcon on a little perch next to him, a sort of Merlin falcon, just a small hunting falcon that he kind of strokes the head of as he surveys his work. And that is where we will leave things until next time. So thank you very much, everyone.